Welcome to our second annual Fail Fest. This year's Fail Fest is focused on employability. I'm so delighted that you're here with us. We'll get started in just a few minutes at the top of the hour. Please remember that interpretation is available. So if you would prefer Spanish or French, you can choose the appropriate icon, the appropriate language using the interpretation icon at the bottom of your screen. It also could be at the top of your screen, depending on if you're joining from a browser, but go ahead and find that interpretation icon if you need it. We will be broadcasting in multiple languages later today, so that'll be important to know where that is. And again, as you are coming in, please introduce yourself into the chat. Tell us where you're joining from today, your organization, and why you're here. What interested you about being in the Fail Fest? And thanks so much, Peter, for introducing yourself, Esther, for introducing yourself. Thank you so much. Luisa, hola, thank you. I'm seeing Richard introduce himself. Wonderful. Well, thank you again all so much for being here. We're going to get started right now, as it is at the top of the hour, according to my clock. And so I wanted to begin by really saying hello and welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a really exciting event. It's one of my highlights of the year. This is our Higher Education Fail Fest for Employability. My name is Dr. Jennifer LeBron, and I will be your facilitator for today. Some of you may have been in our events before, you may know me, but in addition to being our facilitator for today, I am the lead for the USAID Higher Education Learning Network, which we call the Helen. I'm also a technical advisor at Education Development Center. And I am really so delighted to welcome you to our second annual Fail Fest. And this is really a great event. I love hearing stories from our members and learning from our failures. It's just really exciting and a great way to build our community. First, let me just remind you that we are recording the Fail Fest and the file will be available after the event. So please know that. I also want to share a couple of norms for our time together. So first, auto closed captioning is available in English. To access it, please click on the CC icon at the bottom of your screen. Second, please make sure to stay muted and keep yourself off camera, if you don't mind, when not speaking, so we can preserve bandwidth for our folks coming from different parts of the world. And next, we're also going to be using an app called Slido for our Q&A and for comments throughout the Fail Fest. So Slido allows you to not only post a question or a comment, but it also allows you to upvote your favorite questions to move them to the top of the list. The link for the Slido is actually now in the chat. Thank you so much to our wonderful producers for putting it there. So feel free to take a moment to click on that link or copy that link, open it so that you can have it ready. We are going to be doing Q&A throughout our time together, and we'll take questions at various points today. So we'll be reposting the link as needed, but you can add questions at any time, okay? All right, so today's Fail Fest is really designed to honor innovation, including the risks and failures that come with that innovation. It helps us collectively understand and share what we've learned with each other. So our goal today is to share and learn from failure from several employability initiatives from around the world. And you can see on the screen now, this is our agenda for today. So Fail Fests highlight quick, rapid fire storytelling. So each speaker is only going to have just 5 minutes to convey their story. And we'll have a Q&A, question and answer session after each pair of stories. And, you know, given our time limits, if we do not get to all of your questions during the Q&A, the storytellers, our speakers today, will respond to them offline. And you'll receive the responses in about a week or two following the Fail Fest in our follow-up email. But before we hear from our speakers, I want to share just a couple of reasons why the Helen is hosting this event. So the first thing is that the Helen is all about addressing the USAID Higher Education Learning Agenda, and specifically the Learning Agenda question 4, which focuses on employability. How can skills or competencies such as technical and soft skills for employability be best identified, analyzed, and incorporated into curricula, teaching, and learning? This is a really broad question, and this is just one of the ways that the Helen is trying to address this. Um, the employability has been such a key topic for the Helen for really since our official launch last year during the Higher Education Global Evidence Summit. And actually, you can see a photo from that event on the screen now, including the I am the Helen icon you can see behind me. We are all part of the Helen. But during that 3-week event, we spent about 1 week hearing from USAID staff, implementing partners, researchers, and youth about the programs, practices, and policies that support the employability of graduates. And this event and the other work in the Helen emphasizes this really complex relationship between higher education graduates and the workforce, and emphasizes that this needs to be flexible to meet the needs of the future. Higher education needs to prepare graduates not just for employment, but instead focus on the ways that those graduates can be continuously employable. And higher education sits within this larger employability ecosystem that comprises local labor markets, local industries, national policies that can enhance innovation and facilitate collaborations with industry, and higher education institutions themselves. So today's stories actually tackle many parts of this employability ecosystem and the ways that our speakers have worked within the system in their higher education institutions. And these conversations can't just be about the skills that we need to impart onto graduates. I think the really most powerful thing for us to remember is that while that's important, we have to recognize the entire ecosystem and the leverage points that higher education institutions can use to ensure their graduates can be continuously employable. And so I'm really pleased to share that the Helen is taking up some of this important work in a variety of ways. In the next few months, we are going to be working with our members to launch a global and local review of evidence for employability, practices within higher education institutions. And then this is really going to try to understand how this employability ecosystem and how that works with higher education institutions in particular. We're going to begin a series of local consultations starting in Africa and Latin America and the Caribbean. And we're going to work to uncover local practices, understand workforce needs and labor market conditions that really create sort of innovative approaches to employability. And this work will be guided by a global working group. I'm very excited that this working group will comprise both Helen steering group representatives, Helen members, and global higher education institutional leaders to help us really address this learning agenda question and help us set goals and priorities for this work moving forward. And so here's my pitch. If you would like to be involved, please make sure that you have actually officially joined the Helen. You can find up-to-date details on our consultations, our working group membership, and other ways for you to be involved. There's a great link in the chat that you can follow to join. And if you yourself have employability innovations, we would love to hear from you. So please feel free to email us at usaidhelen@edc.org. That is the email address that you'll see in the chat as well. We're really excited to work with our members and to bring your knowledge to our global membership. So do sign up and email us if you have any thoughts. And so with that, I think it's time for us to get started with the storytelling. And I am really excited that we're going to be sharing these innovations and exciting developments from our 6 speakers who come from really different parts of the world. And they have sort of different employability ecosystems, different institutions and partners. And all of our speakers are going to share what they've tried to enhance employability of higher education graduates. I'm really excited, as I said, to bring these stories to you. And I hope that you will learn as much as I have in working with them. So to begin, our first 2 presenters will be sharing their FailFest stories about the challenges of changing institutions themselves, either at the country level or within an institution. And as a reminder, if you have questions during the presentations, please add them to the Slido using that link from above, or you can use the code that's pasted into the chat as well. So put your questions there and I will get to them when we get to the Q&A piece. All right. Okay, our first presenter is Dr. Peter Okante from the Palm Institute in Ghana. And Peter, I think I see you on screen now, so I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. LeBron. My name, as Dr. LeBron said, is Dr. Peter Carlos Okante, and I'm the founder and president of Palm Institute. So in 2004, I got an opportunity to relocate to the US, specifically Oregon, Portland, Oregon. And I was just blown away by the differences between the world I grew up in and what I was seeing in the United States. And I quickly came to the realization that the challenges had to do with high levels of unemployment, lack of technical and professional industry skills, the absence of quality education, higher education, and also generational corruption in our country and our culture. So I quickly came to the conclusion that I needed to do something to help. And so the conclusion was to invest in leadership and higher education and quality higher education. So I decided to try this, of course, with colleagues and employees on the ground. I decided to set up a foundation for higher education. We call it the NAPE Foundation. The NAPE Foundation was established in 2006, and the foundation had a vision to establish a 4-year university that we called Palm Institute. In 2014, we launched what we call 2-year diploma programs in a rented 4-bedroom house that we converted into laboratories, lecture halls, library, and we started awarding certificates in 2012, but in 2014, we started running the diploma programs. Now, the programs were handed over to us by the accrediting body, but we added value to it in order to meet our employability challenges. So we added career seminars, we added job shadowing opportunities, and we added internship opportunities for the students. They were doing 40 hours a week for 3 months internships. Now, at a point in time, we realized it wasn't working. So we decided to pursue accreditation for a 4-year program. When we tendered in our application, the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission rejected our application. They rejected our buildings as well. And so we quickly decided to buy land and build our own facilities in order to be accepted and accredited by the Tertiary Education Commission. In the course of doing that, we received a letter banning us from operating as a tertiary education institution. At that point in time, I felt, I have failed and decided to relocate and go back to Ghana. But then we decided to overcome the challenges that we encountered during the construction process and also the ban by the Tertiary Education Commission. And this is how we pivoted. We actually completed the construction of our own permanent campus. We decided to go for accreditation, go back to the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission for accreditation, and we sought partnerships with other universities, the University of Cape Coast in Cape Coast, and we also sought to get collaborations with Oklahoma State University in Oklahoma. We were able to finish all these construction processes and accreditation processes and got accredited to run our first 4-year program, which is the Business Information Technology program. What did we do different from the previous? We set up a corporate advisory council that gave input into our curriculum. We also set up the Student Life and Career Services Department that superintended, internships, and job shadowing opportunities for our students. The center also runs career seminars regularly on weekly basis for the students. And we also launched a corporate mentoring and peer mentoring programs for our students, all in our quest to prepare them to be employable after the 4 years. We also set up what we call the Green Lab, and the Green Lab is our innovation and technology incubator that also prepares our students to pursue and develop their entrepreneurial ideas. Now, because of corruption in our culture, we also decided to adapt the honor code as a university so we can focus on raising ethical leaders who can overcome the challenges of corruption in our culture. Now, what did we learn from this whole process? We learned quickly that it was possible, or it is possible, to incorporate employability components into higher educational curricula. We also worked very rigorously with our faculty and staff to act as mentors and counselors for our students in order to prepare them for the world of work. And finally, we ensure that we are preparing our students and making sure that they are career ready, which we strongly believe is the most important aspect of acquiring a degree from any university, particularly our university, Palm Institute. So I thank you all very much for this opportunity, and I'll be standing by to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter. I love hearing your story of perseverance and tackling this large accreditation problem and turning it into something that's really an innovative example of a 2-year and 4-year degree program that supports employability. So thank you so much. I just want to remind you that please do add your questions to the Slido. We're going to come back to them after we hear from our next presenter. And I'm going to turn it over to her, Lara Faye Contiango de la Rama from the University of Science and Technology in the Southern Philippines. And we're going to hear her story now. So Lara, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jennifer. Good day, everyone. My name is Lara Faye, and I am the former director of the Career Services and Government Industry Community Relations of the University of Science and Technology of Southern Philippines, or USTP, a public university in the island of Mindanao. Since 2014, our university has partnered with the USAID STRIDE program in developing career centers that are now serving over 10,000 students in our 8 campuses annually. But instituting a new office within a public university is no easy task. So allow me to share a particular challenge we faced as we tried to rewire our university systems to provide better student career services. To help establish our career center, USAID provided technical assistance from career center directors from US universities who advised us in the organization and service content of our fledgling centers. I was also given the opportunity to visit and learn from the centers operating at Florida State University and Pennsylvania State University. As our operations started, and in every meetup we have with industry partners, the most challenging question often asked to us is, are your graduates truly ready to take their intended careers with us? Recruiters emphasize the top skills or attributes needed to be developed for one to be career ready, such as oral and written communication skills, analytical skills, management skills, cognitive flexibility in their field, and finally, confidence. Our students were indeed not confident. When we surveyed our students in 2019, 92% agreed that they needed further training in career preparation. To address this, we came up with a Career Success Development Program, or CSDP, to develop competencies and awareness specific to students' chosen career path. The program was divided into 3 parts: college and career readiness for freshmen, career planning in the 2nd year, and English for academic and specific purposes in the 3rd year. We wanted this program to be mandatory for all students. And with these aspirations begin our conflict or challenge. In coordination with our academic division unit, the program we originally proposed was to be equivalent to a 2-unit required course for each year level from freshman to junior year. When the CSDP program was presented to the university's academic council, it quickly failed to get the council's endorsement. The council's primary concern was the approach of the program being credited as additional course units. There is already pressure to minimize required credits to be taken by students, as more and more courses are being mandated by regulators and accreditors. In response, the council proposed single workshops or training to address the need for career planning and industry-defined skills. So, the Career Center resubmitted the proposal to the Academic Council with a revision that the CSDP will be embedded in the current curriculum, which was eventually endorsed by the Board of Regents. Key changes include embedding first-year activities focusing on career readiness into the National Service Training Program, or NSTP course. Second-year and third-year topics were embedded in existing courses as well, or will be part of required internships and field trips. Ultimately, all the trainings we wanted to provide will be fully integrated within a course curriculum, while content and delivery will be facilitated by the Career Center. To maximize the limited time given, the modules were distilled down to important salient points while still providing the necessary skills for career development. We have already piloted the CSDP to our engineering, technology, and IT programs, which are the flagship programs in our university covering 800 students. Making changes to established institutional systems can be difficult and requires a thorough understanding of the impact of external regulations early in the design phase of any program. It also takes time to establish collaborations with other offices within the university and garner buy-in from faculty and administrators. The CSDP proposal started in 2019, and it took more than a year before we were able to pilot this to select engineering and information technology students in all 3-year levels. Today, other colleges within USTP have expressed interest in integrating the training into their existing courses, and industry partners have said that graduates have improved their confidence, oral communication skills, and work attitude. These positive graduate outcomes we seek are in themselves changing mindsets in more and more members of the university community as we continue to aspire to have career preparation and planning to be integral and essential for all our 12,000 student population. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lara. So appreciated hearing about that and the ways that you had to really adapt your plan to have it fit within the institution. Peter, I hope that you can come on screen now. I'd love to engage both of you in a little bit of a question and answer, because I think both of you really share like the power of not accepting no as the final answer and really finding ways to persevere. I love that. So let's actually start with thanks so much, Peter. I see you there. Let's start with our question and answer, and maybe we could go to the Slido to see what questions have come in. So I'm seeing there was one in the chat that I actually popped in here myself, so we could see it here. But I'm wondering, maybe let's start with you, Peter. This question about the best practices that your institution uses to engage with industry. Do you have a couple of highlights that maybe you could share?
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. LeBron. So, right from the onset, when we were getting into the degree space, we had to engage industry experts. So the program we put together was it's a combination of business, computer science, and information technology. And the whole idea was to raise and train and educate graduates who will fit into the workforce. So we had to get experts in IT, experts in computer science, and those who are leaders in their industries to give input into our curriculum.
How did you identify those institutions or those organizations? How did you pick them to provide input?
Some of them were people in my network, and others yeah, others were referred to me by colleagues in industry and academia. Yes. And sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying yes. Yeah. Personal connections are so powerful in this sometimes.
Definitely. And some of these ladies and gentlemen also came to serve on our corporate advisory council. And so the corporate advisory council members give us input into our curriculum. They meet quarterly. And then these same individuals also open doors for internships and job shadowing opportunities for our students. And so these are practices that we use to build and bridge the gap between, what is happening in our lecture halls and what is actually happening in industry. Yes.
Wonderful. Yeah, so powerful. And right, so it's personal connections you started with, and then it's building kinds of structures that allow them to participate in the institution workings, right? Like curriculum reform and all of that. That's such great experience. Thank you. I'm going to actually ask a question of Lara now. So I see here there was a question about the professional development required for university faculty and staff in order to integrate these changes into the curriculum. I know that Career Center staff are the ones who actually deliver it, but how did you build that relationship, and how did you help faculty really embrace this in their classes?
We also have to make sure that the faculty are well-versed of the career program. So we orient them of the career program and services of the Career Center. And at the same time, we give them the training on how to facilitate these career programs to the students. So because the faculty are the first in line and they're the ones who always in touch with the students. So we make sure that they can also give the career advice firsthand to the students if they have some questions about their programs or they have some doubts about their career path. So we also train our faculty and staff for the career development for our students.
Interesting. And does that training, does that happen sort of once a year? Do you refresh it? How do you keep faculty engaged in this process?
We make sure that our faculty are oriented with the programs and services of the Career Center every year. So we give the orientation to them, and at the same time, we facilitate professional programs also so that they can facilitate this to our students.
Nice. That's great. Thank you so much. I think maybe we have time for maybe one or two more questions. Peter, let me ask you, how do you ensure quality in the relationships that you build, and how do you ensure quality in your internship experience and the job shadowing programs that you have for your students?
Thank you very much, Dr. LeBron. So there's a culture of students, buying food and running errands for companies when they go doing internships and community service. So, and job shadowing. What we do to avoid that is to have formal contracts with these companies, and we lay out the specifics of the relationship. Now, that's one. And number two, what we do is that before the student starts the internship or job shadowing, we go there to visit the company just to ensure that they are credible and they are doing what they say they are doing. Now, during the course of the job shadowing and the internship, we go back and visit and see if the students are doing what they are expected to do. We also receive reports from the students and also reports from the establishment, and we compare and contrast both reports to ensure that our expectations are met. Otherwise, if we leave things aloof, the students will go there and they'll be sitting around doing photocopies and running errands and buying food for them.
Right, absolutely. I have to admit, I had an internship like that in my life where I was. So I'm glad that your institution is ensuring that there's quality, right? Building these, it starts with a personal relationship and then it goes into a more formal process to make sure that the relationship is mutually beneficial, which is great. All right, I think I have time maybe for one more question. I'm gonna take the advantage of being a facilitator. I'm gonna ask you both some final thoughts. What have you learned from this process, this challenges that you faced in hearing a no from an accreditor, and how will you apply these lessons into your future work? So Lara, that's a big question. I'm going to start with you. What did you learn from this experience, and how will you take that learning and apply it in the future?
Well, I really learned that collaboration is very much important. You have to collaborate not only within the university, you have to talk to the administrators and the faculty, and you have to make sure that they also understand the whole concept of the career program, because it is something new and it's innovative. And we learned this from US career centers, and this is something new in the Philippines, like integrating the career program in the curriculum. So that is something that we have to teach also to our students, that they have to have the career plan, and so that they can really decide for their career. So I think what I really learned most is the collaboration is so important. We have to work together, because career center is also part of the innovation ecosystem. So that is what the university is trying to impart to all our students.
Right, wonderful. And Peter, final thoughts from you. How would you apply what you've learned in this process into your future work? Are you making more institutions? No. What have you learned, and how will you apply it?
Thank you very much. I have learned that it is always good to go back to the drawing table, particularly when you run into an obstacle and all you can hear is no, it's not possible. I have also learned that you don't give up on anything that you do, but particularly on the employability aspect, as Lara said, I have learned that you can't do it alone. You know, you could be running an excellent curriculum in your university, but if you are blinded by what is happening in industry, your graduates will graduate and they will be of no use to industry. So then the high rates of unemployment, you know, will still be staring at us. So in order to avoid that, I have learned that we constantly have to reach out to our colleagues in industry and bring them into the lecture halls for them to speak to our students, and for the students to ask them questions, and for them to share their experiences. Yes.
Wonderful. That's such a great lesson, and I appreciate both of you sort of echoing that. It takes time, right? I mean, you've both dedicated a lot of resources and time to building those relationships, but you've seen that blossom and pay dividends. So that's really exciting. Thank you so much for everyone who's posed questions into the chat and the Q&A. I know I didn't get to all of them, but we are going to move on to our next presenter. So I want to say a final thank you to Lara and Peter for being here with us, and keep on staying on because we might come back to you with questions at the end. But for now, let's move on to our next two presenters. Thank you so much, Peter. Thank you so much, Lara.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so our next two presenters are going to be sharing experiences around bridging the skills gap between universities and employers. So a slightly different perspective on this employability question. And so to begin, I'm going to invite Cameron Mirza to come on screen now. Hello, Cameron, who's previously worked at the University of Bahrain to share his FailFest story. Cameron, over to you.
Thank you, Jennifer. And hello to everyone joining us around the world. Well, before I joined Direct and took on the role of Chief of Party for pre-service teacher education in Jordan, I actually spent many years working in the higher education sector, including being head of strategy at the University of Bahrain. And just to give the audience some background, the University of Bahrain is actually the national university for the Kingdom of Bahrain, a country in the Arabian Gulf, with 2,000 faculty and almost 30,000 students. It actually hosts about 70% of the students in the entire HE sector within that country. And I went there with the new president in 2015, where I was fortunate enough to author the University Transformation Plan, which focused on several aspects of improvement, of which graduate employability was one. So we inherited a situation where between 40 to 45% of graduates found employment within 1 year of graduation, which in the context of Bahrain is considered a little bit on the low side. So this photo is actually the day that the president launched the transformation plan to both faculty and students. And we brought in a two-pronged approach. Firstly, a more long-term strategy of aligning programs with industry requirements and integrating more work-based learning opportunities, skill development at both bachelor and at postgraduate level. Naturally, this process would take some time So in parallel, we introduced a bridging program to help recent graduates not in education or employment improve their employment opportunities through gaining skills and competencies. We found broadly that graduates lacked digital literacy, English language proficiency, as well as a real lack of understanding of how to access the employment market. So using existing labour market data, we drew on faculty to devise a one-semester bridging programme that will be delivered in weekends and evenings at no extra cost to the student, with the sole purpose of increasing employment opportunities. And typically this programme would focus on Microsoft Office, basic programming languages, cloud skills, and English language proficiency. So after one semester, the university organised a weekend whereby employers actually came to the campus to meet students and interview them for possible opportunities. And sadly, it was clear that the students' technical skills, in particular technology such as programming, were not in line with employer needs, and students lacked practical skills such as communication and critical thinking. Feedback was also received that students lacked confidence and strong language skills. And so through research with employers and holding focus groups, we found that the learning experience of students was too academic in its nature, and at times could be quite boring. And looking at the photo, which I actually took on the screen, you can see, perhaps you can't see, that many students were actually asleep or on Snapchat. This was before TikTok was invented. And that was actually a part of the bridging program. Overall, the employer and student feedback told us that the program really wasn't providing the skills or credentials needed to enter into the job market. And perhaps more importantly, students found themselves lacking the self-confidence and positive attitude to be successful in this transition. So the entire philosophy of employability required rethinking, redesigning, and needed to be redefined. We created a more integrated program that is aligned with industry, that is developmental and progressive. And this required breaking down deep traditions in academia by suggesting that perhaps faculty alone are not enough to support students learn, develop, and grow. The program formed partnerships with employers such as Amazon Web Services and Cisco to help provide real-world experiences for students, update the bridging program curricula to be relevant, and provide endorsement of the student credentials. These partnerships allowed, for example, the introduction of the first cloud computing program in the region, Cisco cybersecurity certification. We also work with small and medium enterprises that lacked the ability to predict hiring or future skills. And so to address this, we actually partnered with LinkedIn to provide up-to-date relevant data regarding skills in demand, emerging job patterns, and hiring needs both locally and internationally. So a word of warning that this photo at the LinkedIn launch was actually not that long ago, but clearly shows how being a chief of party can accelerate one's aging. We pivoted by actually taking a more holistic approach to supporting students that included language proficiency, developing their grit, their confidence, self-efficacy, emotional intelligence, and supporting their mental well-being through counselling and mentoring, leveraging both alumni and employers. So through this process, we learned that partnership working with employers at a deep level is critical to solving employability challenges through relevant teaching methods, curricular design, experiential learning opportunities, and real-world assessment. We also learned that robust and regular data is needed to draw inferences that support student skill development and to improve typically poor career advice. We also learned that internationally recognized credentials support global mobility for students seeking employment, and the development of this framework with 6 pillars helped us to move to a lifelong and life-wide approach to learning and places meaningful collaboration at the center of removing barriers to employment. Finally, as a result of these shifts, we saw employment rates of graduates rise by 37% in 12 months since the adoption of this model. By redefining employability through an institutional approach that leverages an employer-centered partnership model to support whole person development that's demonstrated success and presents a model that is applicable almost anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cameron. I love hearing this story. I love the pivot, and I particularly like the way that you've built a program that was designed to meet students where they are, evenings and weekends, and then enhance it with these really successful industry collaborations. So thank you so much for sharing. Just another quick reminder, if you have questions for Cameron or another speaker coming up, please add them into the Slido. We'll have a chance to answer them in a minute. But for now, I'd love to turn it over to our next presenter, who's also going to be talking about the MENA region. But instead of focusing on the challenges, with matching graduate skills to the labor market, this presenter is going to talk about what happens when the skills are there, but the market has not yet caught up. So we're going to hear from Dr. Rebecca Ward, who works with IREX in Jordan, to hear about this. And over to you, Becky.
Thanks, Jen. Hi, everyone. So yeah, when we think about employability, we often tend to gravitate to the supply side. So how can we support education institutions to produce graduates with the skills that meet the needs of employers? But employability only happens with action on the demand side too. And I'm going to talk through some of the issues around recruitment and hiring that impacted employment rates for our first cohort of pre-service teacher education graduates in Jordan. So to provide some context and background, currently in Jordan, the only requirement to teach at grade 4 to 10 is a bachelor's degree and a short training from the Ministry of Education. And this means that teachers head into the classroom lacking many of the skills that we would want them to have. The government recognises that this is far from ideal, and they're really committed to improving teacher preparation. And so aligned with this, in 2021, the USAID pre-service teacher education in Jordan activity supported 4 universities to launch a new pre-service teacher education diploma designed to better prepare these teachers. And so we designed a new curriculum that was carefully developed to improve teachers' practice by building their pedagogical content knowledge, introducing school-based practicum and mentorship, and promoting reflective practice. And we're seeing really, really great results. So graduates are able to apply a range of student-centered learning strategies. They can demonstrate self-efficacy, and they use reflective practice to learn and adapt. So from the supply side perspective, it worked. We've successfully created a course that develops the types of employability skills that we want to see in our teachers. But despite producing highly skilled graduates, and despite really high student satisfaction rates, and despite great feedback from schools on the quality of our graduates, some have struggled to find employment because the rollout of the course outpaced critically needed reform to the way that the government hires teachers. And despite extensive policy advocacy, teachers are still recruited from a long-standing waiting list in the Civil Service Bureau, which leads to the frustrating scenario where some of our newly skilled graduates are waiting in a queue behind others who have not developed the same skills. So imagine being Zaina, a student who's graduated from this, transformative learning experience. It's been delivered with much publicity and outwardly, at least, government support, and only then to find herself kind of back on the waiting list with no clarity on when she'll have the opportunity to teach. And for our first cohort of students, that was a really frustrating position to be in. So to deal with this, we really doubled down on efforts to advance critical reforms to teacher recruitment. And we've managed to substantially improve the prospects for our graduates. So the diploma now holds substantial weight on the Civil Service Bureau's waiting list, meaning that our graduates advance closer to the front of the queue. And the Ministry of Education has committed to automatically hiring the top 20 performing graduates, and they also prioritise our graduates when finding substitute teachers. And then alongside these policy wins, we'll also be providing support to graduates through our alumni engagement activities, including information, advice and guidance about alternative career paths such as private schools and private tuition. So what have we learned from this? I think the first lesson is that improving graduate employment often requires attention to both supply and demand side factors, and particularly in highly regulated public sector professions. And then relatedly, regulation of public professions can be really complex, often cross-government and highly politicized. And the number of agencies that we would need to engage, the number of bylaws that we would need to change, only kind of revealed themselves over time. And they weren't known or understood by key stakeholders at the outset. And then because of this, I think that the final lesson is that policy reform takes time. And in an ideal world, policy reform would have matched pace with the rollout of the diploma. But in reality, this just wasn't feasible. And we perhaps need to be bolder in building in enough time for demand side reforms into our program cycles. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks so much, Becky. Really appreciate that story. I'm really curious about how you were able to sort of work with the ministry and convince them. But I want to invite Cameron back onto the screen as well, because we're going to go into our Q&A section. And maybe I could start with that first question. What were the because I see it in the chat in the Slido. What were the factors that really enabled you? How did you convince the ministry to change its hiring practices? What really resonated with them in order to convince them to do this?
So I think one of the key features of the program has been a program steering committee that was established at the outset with a real intention that it didn't just serve a programmatic function, but it served a governmental function in terms of bringing cross-governmental stakeholders involved in pre-service teacher education together. And because of the nature of pre-service teacher education, that involves the Civil Service Bureau, because they play a role in hiring, the Ministry of Education, because they regulate schools, and the Ministry of Higher Education, because they regulate higher education providers. And really, I think prior to that committee, there'd been an absence of coordination across those agencies. And so bringing them together to have dialogue and to understand each other's needs and perspectives, I think was really critical in moving the policy dialogue forward. Because universities were able to articulate, the kind of face-to-face interactions that they have with students who are struggling to find employment. The Ministry of Education was able to articulate its struggles in filling hiring roles. And so helping that kind of creation of a shared value and a shared understanding, I think, was really critical in moving the needle.
Very, very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing. Cameron, there's a couple of questions in the chat for you about, maybe I'll start with this first one, this employer endorsed micro-credentials. Could you talk a little bit more about how that worked in the bridging program?
So yeah, sure. So Amazon Web Services actually built their data center on our campus. Well, so I think, we talk about industry collaboration. I think that's probably, a great example of that. And so they have a whole suite of certificates, particularly around cloud computing. So AWS Cloud Practitioner, but it's not just limited to AWS. So Cisco Cybersecurity Certification, Microsoft AI, Microsoft Azure AI. So those certificates actually give employers and students confidence in the credentials that they're gaining, and we found that to be quite successful in helping students to build up their portfolio of certificates that are supported by industry. So there's some examples there.
That's great. And because of the relationships that were built into the bridging program, you actually embedded those micro-credentials into the curriculum. So the students were not only getting that confidence you were talking about, but also this certificates that were valuable for employers. Yeah,
absolutely. So the key thing is currency for me, Jennifer. So now, as part of the bachelor program, students would graduate with their diploma in one hand, but they will also have a suite of employer endorsed micro credentials. So longer term, as some of the more sort of developing countries evolve their systems, those micro credentials should become stackable over time, and that represents significant value for both employers and students.
Nice, great. Okay, thanks, Cameron. Becky, there's a question here in the chat for you as well. What are the job market prospects for teaching graduates in the private education sector? Or what are your graduates doing when they don't have the ability to go into the public sector right away? How are you supporting them there?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that we're really keen to develop is stronger relationships with private sector schools. Honestly, the wider political economy of the programme has been something of a barrier to that, because the Ministry of Education is keen for us to prioritise filling the teacher shortage in the public sector schools. But what we have done is partner with private sector schools as part of their practicum placements. So students have opportunity to experience both public and private sector schools. And we're also seeking an international accreditation for their pre-service teacher education diploma with CAPE in the US, which is something that's going to kind of build the legitimacy of the programme. And it's something that certainly the leading private sector schools place quite a high emphasis on. So we're expecting that that will also, you know, kind of elevate the status of our graduates in the labour market when we've secured that accreditation. Interesting.
Okay, great. And the lessons that you've learned in working with the ministry and bringing them together for these conversations, have you seen, or do you think there's anything that's applicable to other hiring policies in other sectors in Jordan?
Well, I mean, from an implementer's perspective, I think that the big lesson learned is around really understanding the regulatory framework around hiring at the outset. And I think as a program design, we had a political economy analysis built into our program. And that was really, really good for kind of identifying some of the bigger dynamics in the sector around how we needed to navigate the kind of the politics, the political economy of the system. But what it didn't do was a real deep dive into the kind of legal language and the policies that would be needed to be adapted. And I think from our perspective, that's a really important lesson. And I think in future, we would certainly build that into a program design. And then I think that the second thing is recognizing the importance of the demand side and starting that in the program right at the outset and building in important timelines and realistic timelines to enable that to happen.
Great, thank you so much. Cameron, we just have a couple more minutes. I'm going to end with a question. When we were preparing, I told you one of my personal interests is in faculty and how they make choices in their classroom. So I see there's a question here about if faculty were teaching in the bridging program, but I guess my larger question for you is, how did you work with faculty to convince them to do this bridging program, and then ultimately to invite collaboration from others to enhance the curriculum? What was that relationship like, and how did you support their understanding of that problem?
So initially it was very painful, to be honest, but I think it's about finding a system that is based on a push and pull. So the first thing we did was put in place as part of the transformation plan was an institutional wide target in terms of graduate employability. So everyone in the institution understands where we're trying to move to. I think employability in particularly needs to be woven into the fabric of the institution. It can't be done on a silo, college or program by program approach. It's really about helping or supporting faculty to really embrace it. And the way we did that was by giving points for promotion based on industry collaboration, which was based on depth. So that goes beyond employability. That's also about industry collaboration with regard to research and for innovation. And if they can put forward solid evidence around their collaboration, meaningful collaboration, that obviously supports them in their promotion. But also it was about establishing program advisory committees. So the PACs typically were worked in a kind of vacuum. So we had to break that down by using, as Becky's always talked about, the regulations, using the university regulations to make sure that industry has a seat at that table, and they had also, you know, input onto curriculum design in terms of understanding what the quality of experiential learning looks like, their roles and responsibilities, inviting them to be part of the teaching workforce through being an adjunct professor. Oh. So various mechanisms we had to put in place to ensure that this was not just you know, actioned, but it also became sustainable and mainstreamed as part of the university for the long term.
Wonderful. And if I can infer even further, I think that you're talking a lot about ways to build trust, right, between the faculty and the program and the industry collaborators. Is that fair as well?
Yeah, so I think trust is a key word. I think it's also helping each other, so industry and academia, understand their roles and value add. Yep. So I think you know, the problem we faced was industry wouldn't even understand the offer, the higher education offer. What can they bring to the table in terms of industry and value? Right. So it was about, you know, creating an offer and then going out to industry to understand this is how we can work with you, and this is how this could benefit you in terms of innovation, in terms of skills, in terms of, you know, research, R&D. So it's creating win-wins.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you, Becky. Thank you, Cameron, so much for participating and sharing your stories and this lovely Q&A. I wish I could continue it, but unfortunately we have more fabulous things to share. So we're going to go ahead and switch to our last two final FailFest presentations. Our presenters for the last part of today will be sharing their experiences in adapting their program through assessment, by assessing their programs and the data that they got from that. So to begin, we're going to be hearing from Delmira Ravago, who works with Data Elevates in Chile. Delmira will be presenting in Spanish, so please go to the English interpretation channel to listen in English. If you are in the French channel, you can stay there. And if for our Spanish speakers, you can switch to the main audio or original audio. So I'm going to give you a moment to do that. So English speakers, go to the English channel. Spanish speakers, go to original audio, and French speakers, please stay where you are. All right, I'm going to give you one more few seconds to switch, and I'm going to do that myself, and then we're going to turn it over to Delmira. Delmira, please take it away.
Feliz día a todos. Hoy compartiré con ustedes parte de nuestra experiencia en los bootcamp de ciencia de datos realizados en Chile. ¿Qué debemos conocer del contexto? Hacia diciembre del 2021, Chile había recibido casi 500.000 de migrantes venezolanos, muchos de los cuales se enfrentan a una crítica realidad. Una gran proporción de estos migrantes son adultos en edad de trabajar. La mayoría son mujeres, de las cuales casi el 43% completaron sus estudios en educación superior en su país antes de llegar a Chile. Aún con estos estudios universitarios, estas mujeres solo tienen acceso a empleos básicos y subpagados y enfrentan discriminación en el mercado laboral. Frente a esta realidad, CDI Chile y Data Elevate desarrollaron un curso de capacitación en programas técnicos capaz de cubrir una de las tantas demandas del mercado laboral chileno y así reducir la brecha digital y de género. El programa fue diseñado para mujeres migrantes de educación medio superior con el objetivo de dotarlas de herramientas útiles que le permitan acceder a empleos mejor remunerados y adecuados de acuerdo a su nivel académico. ¿Cómo implementamos el proyecto? Data Elevate es una empresa privada que trabaja en el fortalecimiento de competencias tecnológicas para poblaciones desfavorecidas y ayuda a que las organizaciones hagan uso de la información y datos disponibles para la toma de decisiones. En este proyecto identificamos dos de las competencias más buscadas por los empleadores en Chile: análisis de datos y visualización de datos. Con base a esto, diseñamos un programa virtual intensivo de capacitación laboral para la población migrante. Si bien el programa se enfoca en el análisis y la visualización de datos, también incluimos habilidades interpersonales. En esta capacitación, los participantes usan plataformas de acceso público como el Tableau, el Power BI, a través de módulos en línea. Además, ofrecemos secciones de cómo hablar en público, expectativas durante las entrevistas de trabajo, y el uso de LinkedIn para el desarrollo profesional. El programa también incluye tutorías individuales o en equipos. ¿Cuándo y cómo identificamos fallas en la implementación del proyecto? En la primera cohorte reclutamos participantes que tenían experiencia previa en programas de capacitación con sede en Chile. No obstante, en la segunda cohorte reclutamos inmigrantes que requerían fortalecer el manejo de las herramientas básicas y su formación para la empleabilidad, muchas de las cuales tenían estudios de educación superior en campos diferentes. Fue en esta segunda cohorte que identificamos que algunas de las participantes tenían muchas dificultades para seguir el ritmo de las sesiones intensivas, mantenerse como alumnas activas o tenían participación limitada debido a su entorno laboral. También observamos que las participantes tenían una amplia gama de nivel académico, experiencia profesional y situaciones económico-migratorias que afectaban su capacidad de aprendizaje. Estas circunstancias impactaron significativamente su progreso. Aunque muchas de estas participantes tenían estudios universitarios, necesitaban apoyo adicional para comprometerse a terminar el curso y avanzar con las secciones. También necesitaban mejores contactos con empresas que pudieran darles empleo para poner en práctica sus conocimientos técnicos. ¿Cómo adaptamos nuestro plan de trabajo y metodología? Conforme fuimos identificando los problemas, decidimos analizar nuestros propios datos y hacer una retrospección de los programas de capacitación. Hicimos una evaluación exhaustiva de los conocimientos informáticos de los participantes, tales como su nivel de Excel, pero también revisamos su situación personal, sus intereses, compromisos, interés y las responsabilidades cotidianas. Con base a estos resultados, adaptamos el contenido del curso para poder responder mejor a las habilidades y realidades de estas mujeres. Creamos entonces nuevos contenidos utilizando videos más cortos, detallados, añadimos instrucciones paso a paso, otorgamos más tiempo para completar los proyectos en equipo y creamos horarios de tutoría más flexibles para que las participantes pudieran estar en casi toda la totalidad del programa sin dejar a un lado sus compromisos laborales. ¿Qué aprendimos de nuestro proyecto? Bueno, la implementación del proyecto nos ayudó a identificar las necesidades de las mujeres migrantes y la flexibilidad del sistema de capacitación adaptado a sus objetivos, tiempos y nivel de conocimiento. Ha sido importante combinar las competencias técnicas con las interpersonales, las tutorías, las experiencias, las pasantías laborales. Aprendimos que para que el compromiso de las participantes se mantenga y puedan equilibrar con su empleo actual, se requiere que la experiencia del bootcamp sea significativa y práctica para conectar sus habilidades técnicas con los empleadores. El trabajo en equipo fue esencial para desarrollar las habilidades interpersonales que le permitan entender y conectar con el mercado laboral. Todas estas lecciones nos han permitido entender las necesidades de las mujeres migrantes para acceder a un mejor empleo calificado y remunerado en Chile y las continuaremos implementando en nuestro próximo bootcamp en mayo del 2023. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you so much, Delmira. I so appreciate hearing the ways in which you transformed your bootcamp and your programming to fit the needs of your learners, particularly vulnerable learners. So it's so great to hear all of the changes that you've made to make the program more accessible and meaningful. Thank you so much. Thank you. Our final presenter, I'm going to invite on screen now, Mr. Emmanuel Magomira, who works with the Strengthening Higher Education Access in Malawi activity, or SHIMA in Malawi. This presentation will be in English. So again, English speakers, you can return to the main audio, which I am going to do myself right now, the original audio channel, English speakers. Spanish speakers can change back to the Spanish channel. And French speakers, you just keep on staying in one place. That would be great. I'll give everybody a second to do that. Again, English speakers in the main audio, original audio channel, and Spanish speakers into the Spanish interpretation channel. Okay, I think everybody's in the right place. So Emmanuel, would you like to take it away?
Thank you so much. I'm Emmanuel Magomero, working for Arizona State University, and an activity called Strengthening Higher Education Access in Malawi activity. It is funded by USAID, and it is a 5-year activity. As I said, being implemented by Arizona State University, but in partnership with 5 university partners and industry partners. The aim of the activity are twofold. One is to increase access to higher education, and the second one is to develop, is to contribute to the development of an employable workforce in Malawi. These are responding to the two key issues facing Malawi. One of them is low access to higher education, which at the moment is at 0.03%. That's overall national access, and 53% among the eligible candidates. Eligible candidates refers to those who have completed secondary school and they have got the credits that would necessitate them to join the higher education. So out of that, only 53% do have access to higher education. The second challenge is to do with the low school to work transition, which at the moment is around 29.1%. So to address these two challenges, SHIMA has adopted three approaches. The first one is the provision of scholarships. The second one is facilitating the development and delivery of courses through open distance and e-learning approach. These two approaches speak to the access to higher education. And the third approach, which is the incorporation of bridging to employment interventions in the course life cycle, speaks to access to school to work transition initiatives, which should enhance the employability of the students. So bearing in mind those two issues, we tried the following as an activity. One of them was to facilitate the engagement between industries and universities in consultative course development, review, and delivery. We also engaged the industry to provide internship places for students to gain practical experience in their respective areas of field of study. And this has also been complemented by the provision of mentorship, volunteership, as well as career fair sessions. To us, the two approaches have facilitated the following: enhance the industry responsive skills development, enhance the students' understanding of the world of work. What we wanted was to ensure that beyond focusing on passing exams, students should know that whatever they are learning should be applied in the world of work. So we wanted them to have that understanding. The assumption here was that if industries and universities were to work hand in hand throughout the course life cycle, then graduating students would have acquired the skills needed by the industry. This would directly contribute to their employability. So that was the assumption we had. But however, having worked on the programming side for 3 to 4 years, we were not so sure as to whether we are really delivering our desired impact. Although we had seen that some graduates were securing employment and some were upgrading using the skills they have acquired throughout the course delivery. And this was due to lack of reliable data for measuring school to work transition. We noted that all the university partners we were working with did not have what we would call dynamic alumni tracking system that could provide real-time school to work transition rates per course. This to us was a missing link. And we note and appreciate that if universities were to have that data, it would assist them to analyze the variances in the school to work transitions amongst the courses, amongst the universities, so that they are able to reprogram courses with low school to work transition to enhance the employability of the graduates. So what did we do, having noted that challenge in terms of availability of data? We took two approaches. The first one was to design a rapid alumni tracking system or survey for graduates from courses that were developed and delivered using the university industry engagement model. This was a quick gain approach because it was project-based approach. We did that 6 months after graduation. So we noted that this could not be sustainable as it was project-based. So we thought of doing the second approach, which was to work hand in hand with the university partners to develop a dynamic alumni tracking system. So to that end, we worked with 3 university partners: Malawi University of Science and Technology, Lilongwe University of Agriculture and Natural Resources, and Nzuzu University. The systems will capture data that will enable real-time school to work transition because focusing on some of the following parameters or variables. One of them is the total number of graduates per course. Then the second one is total number of graduates employed, but segregated as follows: those in self-employment, those employed by others, those employed in the same sector the course belongs to, and those employed in other sectors other than where the course belongs to. You would appreciate the picture on this slide, which is showing dummy data from the alumni tracking system developed by Nsuzu University, which is showing and comparing the school-to-work transition rates within the faculties. We thought that having that data readily available would facilitate decision-making within and amongst the faculties to enhance the employability. So what is it that we learned by the end of the day? We noted that convincing universities to develop and adapt or adopt a dynamic alumni tracking system was challenging. It needed a lot of lobbying. You need to convince them, you need to make a business case, because some of them do already have got some sort of alumni tracking system, but we wanted it to be a little bit much better in terms of programming and access to information, which is critical for decision making. We also noted that the alumni tracking system could help inform the development of new coursework that is responsive to the employer's needs and bring clearer connections between industries and universities. This is what we are still testing as a project, and it's bearing some fruits. We also noted that the alumni tracking system could help to fill the gap existing in the labor market data by tracking individuals, universities, school-to-work transition rates. This could give us a proxy indicator in terms of the employability of students within and amongst the sectors from which the courses are being offered from. And the final learning point was that a country-level data is needed to guide successful school-to-work transition programming in Malawi. This is mindful that Malawi is yet to operationalize the labor market information system. So in absentia of the operational labor market information system, we could use the alumni tracking system being designed, developed, and implemented by the university partners. These are the 4 key learning points which we noted through the implementation of the Shima Active Day. I thank you so much for your attention. Thank you so much. Zikomo kwambiri. Thank you.
I hope that our audience was able to hear just this amazing transition that you built these programs with industry collaboration. You needed to have this data, you built the system for the universities, and then you worked with the universities themselves to build their own systems of alumni tracking. So that's really, I really love this story of all of the ways that you've pivoted and created value for both the universities and their graduates. So thank you so much. Delmira, you're back on screen. That's wonderful. Emmanuel, don't go away. Come back on screen. We're going to do a Q&A that might be the most complicated one I've ever done. Delmira, is it okay if I ask you questions in English and you respond in English, or would you prefer to respond in Spanish?
Como prefieras.
No preference. Okay. Okay. Well, let me start with you, Emmanuel. I'm really curious, how long I see some questions that have already come in. How long have your data systems been in existence, and how long do you plan to track alumni from the university? Is this going to be an annual thing for many years out, or are you looking at a specific time frame for tracking this data?
So for the first one, which was the rapid one, we were looking at 6 months after employment. So once we have a cohort, we will track them 6 months after graduation to see the status of employment upon completion of 6 months. But the one we are developing with the university partners, this is an open-ended way, because we want the alumni to go back to their respective university websites, get in touch, provide the information, provide the feedback, and that data will be kept by the system, which the university can extract the report they want to check at any time, at any point in time. So this is going to be continuous and up to date. That's what we aspire to achieve by the end of the day. Thank you.
Wonderful. And can I ask you one more clarifying question? You said that you want students to go to the university website to update the information, but are you also working with universities to do outreach, to email or contact by phone or WhatsApp alumni to get that information or remind them to update?
Yes, when we were developing the system, we had a representation from the alumni community. So they have got their own social media groupings at the moment, like the WhatsApp, the Facebook, so on and so forth. So ideally, what we have agreed is once the system has been developed, then a link is going to be shared by the alumni community, which will be shared amongst themselves. And if, in some cases, there's already a pre-determined profile, which one just needs to access and accept and modify, because the system will be able to check if you enter your registration number, then it will have the basic information of you already available. So you just have to claim the account. So that's what we are trying to do. We involved them at the development, and we are also involving them in terms of spreading the news of the alumni tracking system, which the university has developed. Thank you so much, Andrew.
Wonderful. Thank you, Emmanuel. Yes, I'm asking these questions because I feel like alumni data is a really missing element of what many universities and programs need in order to be able to assess their success. So hearing about how you've built it, how you're thinking about it long term, I think is going to be really helpful for our audience. So thank you. So Delmira, I'm going to move over to the English channel, perhaps that would be helpful. But I wanted to ask you, I'm curious about this question. You talked about the barriers for women's experience in the labor market. Could you share some success stories and what skills did they have?
Bueno, voy a usar la mía. Llegué a Chile, formé parte del programa de visualización de datos, Aprendo Data, como estudiante en la primera cohorte. A pesar de mi experiencia laboral y mi formación académica, estaba desempleada y decidí tomar estas formaciones para aprender cosas nuevas. Y bueno, me ayudaron muchísimo. Estuve en la primera cohorte con Rod Sigan de profesor, y luego a partir de la tercera cohorte formé parte del grupo de mentoría y de tutorías a las alumnas de la cohorte 2 y 3, y a partir de la cuarta cohorte estuve en el programa como profesora dando clases en conjunto con María Ángela. Y así he estado en 7 cohortes hasta ahora del programa. Ha sido importante, como yo, han estado, que soy venezolana y soy una mujer migrante en Chile, y he estado 3 años aquí. Como mi historia, hay muchas historias de mujeres que tienen diferentes profesiones, ingenieros, sociólogos, contadoras, y estaban realizando empleos que no eran de acuerdo a su formación académica y a su experiencia. Y bueno, este bootcamp les ha permitido conectar. ¿Qué es importante? Es importante que las mujeres conozcan cómo se mueve el mercado laboral, porque a pesar de la experiencia, si no tienen contactos, si no conocen, muchas de ellas no conocen cómo se maneja el entorno laboral, cómo hacer un currículum, cómo formularlo aquí en Chile. Es diferente formularlo en el país de donde venimos. Es cosas tan sencillas como esa, la comunicación, cómo conectarse a la red, cómo utilizar el LinkedIn para establecer una conexión, para no mantenerse aisladas. Y bueno, estas habilidades que nos permiten este tipo de programas se están utilizando y mucho en el mercado laboral, y muchas de nuestras participantes en el curso las buscan para tratar de acceder a mejores empleos en Chile y continuar pues su vida profesional aquí.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Delmira, for sharing your personal experience. I really wanted our audience to understand that you are one of the women that this program has benefited, and the fact that you're here presenting the power of this program, the way in which it gives the skills that women specifically needed to enter this new cultural environment, this new work environment, and the attention, the way that the data gave you that understanding of the women's needs in order to change the program and to meet them, I just think is so powerful. And when we think about student-centered institutions and learner-centered institutions, those kinds of experiences are just really important to keep in mind as we're designing these employability programs. So thank you for that. I want to acknowledge that there are more questions in the queue, and unfortunately, I don't know that we're going to have enough time to get to them. But I want to move us away and actually maybe talk a little bit to our audience about what you've learned. So let's move to a short wrap up. And then if any of our speakers want to stay on camera or come on camera, that would be fine as well. But let's talk a little bit about this. I really would love the audience to reflect on what we've heard today and really go back to the purpose of our FailFest. So after hearing our storytellers, I'd love to invite you to share into the chat an answer to this question, which is, how might you apply the lessons from these stories to the story of your own work? And are you inspired to do something differently today? So if you have a couple of thoughts, I'd love to see them in the chat, and I'll give everybody a couple of minutes to respond. But once again, how might you apply the lessons from these stories to the story of your own work? And what are you inspired to perhaps do differently? And I'm going to call out some answers as I see them on the screen. But please take a moment. What do you think that you've learned, and how will that apply to your work? And as folks are writing down their thoughts, I see Peter's on screen, but I want to invite anybody else from our speakers to come on. I'd love to hear your key takeaway from the others that you saw today. Peter, do you have any thoughts, something that you've learned that you're going to take away and apply to your own practice? I put you on the spot. I hope you don't mind. Oh, and you're on mute, sir.
Thank you very much. Sorry about that. I think for me, I resonate with Becky's story, and that started from our last, just, I think it was yesterday's meeting, or was the day before, I can't remember. The issues and the challenges that she encounters in Jordan. And for me, it tells me that there is always the need for us to keep pushing the boundaries that are placed before us. And for me, that is what brings the best out of us and makes us think beyond the obstacles that face us every day. I'm trying to remember the other colleague's name, the other gentleman. The question you asked about how he works with faculty to enhance employability activities in his institution, for me, was also a lesson to take away. We have learned that the culture here is such that most of us grew up being taught and taken through the educational systems without the employability component in mind. So when we hire faculty and we start pushing them to take these things on and start doing them, it becomes a little challenging. But with time, I think we made a lot of progress with the faculty we have now. They are beginning to appreciate and understand some of these requirements. So
that's great. Thank you so much for sharing, Peter. Becky, you were called out, so I'm going to give you an opportunity to share a takeaway that you have that you've learned from this experience as well and hearing our stories.
I mean, for me, I've really enjoyed the kind of variety of perspectives in this session, and I think it really highlights for me that a system approach is really necessary. And sometimes there's a risk that we kind of get siloed into one small component of it, but there are multiple actors on the supply and the demand side: education institutions, students themselves, employers, the government, and they all have different needs and incentives. They all have different regulatory restrictions, and we really need to kind of understand these to a forensic detail to be able to bring everybody together in, I guess, mutually beneficial, value-adding relationships that are founded on trust. And then we need to know what is and isn't working. So collecting the data from all of these different constituents to learn and adapt and continuously enhance the provision over time. So it's not easy, but I don't think you can drop any of those balls and move the needle at a kind of meaningful systems level.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. And one of the reasons why we curated these stories is because that you all have such different experiences and you're all speaking to different parts of this ecosystem for employability. And I love all of the lessons that we've learned that are both specific to different parts of that, working with the government, working with faculty, working with and thinking about students, working with alumni, you know, all of those things. There's so many universal lessons we're also hearing about: the value of collaboration, the value of thinking through and understanding the system's perspective and bringing that down, and really the power and the resources it takes in order to do that well, and to make those connections and forge those connections. So that's wonderful. We just have a few more minutes, so I'm going to do a quick wrap up, but I want to thank Peter and Becky for sharing your thoughts. I know some of our other speakers were sharing. If anyone has any other lessons, key takeaways that you would like to share in the chat, I'd love to hear from them. I'd like to understand what you've learned from participating in this event. But let me just say, you know, as the leader for the USAID Higher Education Learning Network, the Helen, I myself am really inspired by seeing so many of our members of our community be willing to share your failures and your lessons learned. We don't talk about failures enough, I think. And this learning from how we pivoted, how we met a challenge and overcame it, and being inspired to do that over and over and over again is just really, really powerful. I think that, you know, the Helen is really designed to help facilitate these kinds of events and this kind of learning, and to help our members really connect and learn from each other. So I'm really delighted to have this event and to have you all here with us. If you want opportunities to connect and learn more from colleagues around the world, or if you would like special access to member-only events, that sounds very fancy, but it's very exciting. These events, which are designed to improve USAID programming as well as influence the field. If you haven't already, I'm going to say one last time, I encourage you to be a member of the Helen. And if you would like to learn about more resources to improve higher education, take a look at the USAID Higher Education Landscape Analysis Evidence Map. So Higher Education Landscape Analysis Evidence Map, which was actually really just updated with the help of the Helen members. So members submitted resources and new knowledge over the last year and during our summit on employability, and that information has been organized into an updated evidence map. So take a look at the link in the chat to find resources for that, as well as others on the Helen website. And with that, I really just want to pause and say my deepest appreciation, my sincere thank you to our presenters, Peter Ocante, Lara Fe Cantiago de la Rama, Cameron Murez, Rebecca Ward, and Delmira Vago, and Emmanuel Mangomera, for sharing your insights. Thank you so much for the members of the Leading Through Learning Global Platform, including our wonderful producers and our staff who helped us create this event, and for you for sticking around for a full 90 minutes to learn about such great innovative programs. Thank you so much for being here. Take a look and keep an eye out for our post-event email with all of our extended Q&A, and for more opportunities to learn from and connect with each other. And with that, I'm going to say thank you so much. Take care and have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you.